Hi there, welcome. I'm Bob Thompson, and I'd like to welcome you to the Philanthropic Planner Program. This is a series of programs that we've done over the years, and I'm embarrassed to even think about this, but I had to laugh. This will test some of you old timers. Frank Buck, Bring 'em Back Alive? Or how about the Omaha series of animals? After a hiatus of about almost a year, maybe a little bit more, we decided to start this again. So this is the second of the new series, I should say. And the old series, about 9.5 years, almost 10. We had 100 programs, give or take one or two. And somebody said, why don't you keep doing them again? So here we are, Frank Buck, Bring 'em Back Alive. He's not dead. The rumors are a little premature. So, Philanthropic Planner, designed for you and me as philanthropists, and we'll get into that in a minute, but individual donors, and also planners, attorneys, accountants, insurance professionals, financial planners, and trust officers, and so on. They tune in once in a while to see if I'm telling the truth, or if I know what the heck I'm talking about, which some people doubt. So welcome again. Why produce this boring subject program of philanthropy? I'm asked that by a number of people. My staff, for example, would say, this is just a distraction for you to get out of the office, and we know why you're doing this, you're crazy. So they're right, and it does get me out of the office for half an hour. I'll have to admit that once a month. But why do this program? I find that there's not a lot out there that talks about philanthropy to the individual donor. We sometimes get caught up in the legalese of having gifts. Changing our will or our revocable trust to include charitable beneficiary designations in our legal documents. There's immediate response by some is, oh my goodness, I don't have millions. I don't even know if I have the capacity. And over the years, I've heard from a number of people, Bob, I would like to do more if I could. I'd like to do more if I knew how. So that's kind of the underlying thing of why we continue to do this. We want to simplify the complexity. We want to share what others are doing with you and for you. And that kind of takes the mystique away. At least we've found that it starts a discussion. And that's another reason. We want to create a forum that has meaningful discussion and conversation about this subject. We have a lot of issues in philanthropy, both good and bad. Some of it's ugly, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But again, welcome. For those of you that remember some of our programs in the past, one of the difficult things is coming up with a title. Karen here, the dictator of this studio, says, well, Bob, you should have a title. So we struggle with that. And today's title is Giving Tuesday. Every day we should have Giving Tuesday. So the Chronicle that we start off with, this is a couple of issues old, but it's one of the reasons we want to talk about giving in the year that this is being taped, 2018, toward the end of the year. But this is back in June of this year, saying the disappearing donor. And in February and March of this year, there were a number of articles, both in the Chronicle of Philanthropy and other news media, that question whether the new tax law, Jobs or Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, whether that would affect donations, philanthropy. Under that act, we almost double our exemptions, and we find that a lot of people are not going to itemize for this tax year. And we'll find out more about that come April of next year. But what is the impact? Well, back in concepts and theories and so on of February and March, we're now coming to the end of the year. December is right around the corner, and we're seeing articles today about giving, and I want to share some of that with you. We find that small donations, and they categorize this in different levels, but small donations have come down a little bit. The third quarter of this year, I'll share some results on small, medium, and very large mega gifts and so on. The third quarter was very good, kind of balanced off a little bit of the first and second quarters that was down. So when we introduce concepts for everyday donor, and I think people say, well, I don't have a lot, I can't be a philanthropist. Let me share with you that one of the biggest forms of philanthropy is volunteering. Volunteerism is at an all-time high, which is good. We find that the number of hours of people volunteering is up. So a lot of our organizations, our nonprofits that need donor dollars, they wouldn't exist if it wasn't for volunteering. So that's a big part of philanthropy that we kind of take for granted as we talk about raising money for the charity. Operationally, we need these charitable donation dollars. But the need is growing because there's less in government subsidizing and giving on the grant side at different levels, but the need for these services is growing. So we have this effect of less and less coming from larger grants, especially the governmental ones, and this need for more services that are needed. And how do we counterbalance that? Well, on the nonprofit side, we talk about retained or retention or repeating donors. And we found that the first three quarters, 9 months of this year, that 17% of first-time donors in 2017 have not yet repeated the same donation, let's say $50 or $100 or what have you, that they're not coming in year over year, month over month, year over year. And that's a concern for many nonprofits. On the other hand, and I'll share with you in a minute, the other side of the spectrum, those dollars that are coming from the mega, the ultra, the uber rich, and those figures, the bigger dollars, have increased year over year. And if we looked, it's probably the second greatest figure in 2017, just 10 or 11 months ago, that it's the second highest of that ultra mega wealthy donations. In fact, the top 50 donors, individual donors, the top 50, donated in 2017 almost $15 billion coming from the top 50 of the donors. And the median of that group is about 97 million. And I'll share with you that no surprise that the Gates, they kind of led the bunch, and they're kind of the John D. Rockefeller of our age. Rockefeller, decades and decades at the beginning of the last century, really. That wealth, they're saying the Gates now are the new John D. Rockefellers. So This determining capacity that I referred to, I would do more if I could. That's capacity. Now, we have the advantage, and it should evidence and result in more giving. Well, we have this 9+ year of a bull market in the stock market. The wealth, the underlying wealth of the community has grown. And we see that larger gifts, and I will say not the $1 million gifts, but the $1,000 gift, the 4-figure gift, that's increased. And I'll share with you what philanthropic planners talk about at their conventions, is not to write out a check in cash for that type of gift, but to go to a highly appreciated asset and gift that to the charity. It makes sense for the donor in not realizing a short-term or long-term capital gain, but rather than writing out a check. We're creatures of habit, and human nature is, I've got cash in the account, it's not making anything at the bank or what have you, I'll just write out a check for this donation. Most common is that we see, and it's not uncommon, that education and religion are at the top of giving. But we see locally, that we see from clients on their tax returns, that the local church may get not just a monthly donation, but a quarterly donation, or a building fund or capital fund, that those are checks that are written out. That's cash. And for those quarterlies or the building fund or what have you, that highly appreciated asset makes more sense when it comes around to handing your tax information to your accountant and finding that, gee, I gave out last year $8,500. How did you give it? Well, there's a string of $50 and $100 gifts, and then there are some of these larger gifts. I just share with you that sometimes there's a better way of giving the same dollars. And when it comes to, do I have the capacity? Yes, I realize that I have the capacity, and maybe I will even increase my $8,500, let's say, to $9,000 or $9,500, $10,000 this year, because I do have the capacity. Now, when we get that question, do I have the capacity? It's not just the snapshot of today. I have the excess bottom line figures. It's not just today that we look at, do I have the capacity? It is looking ahead, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line. Is my decision of possibly increasing my contributions by year end, and there is a lot of activity now, and we'll talk about that in a second, but do I have the capacity, and will it affect me negatively, the impact negative with respect to increases in taxes, increases in real estate taxes, increases in state taxes, increases in every kind of tax that you can think about, sales tax, toll booth tax. Do I have the capacity in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years to make that gift today? And that just takes some number crunching, and we're concerned about increased healthcare costs. So when we look at, we kind of have inflation at a low point the last couple of years, but if you're looking at your Social Security communication, we do have an inflationary kicker in there, an increase of 2.8% for those of you that are receiving Social Security. But along with that increase of 2.8%, depending on your income level, there goes a little tax there and a Medicare premium increase. So what they giveth, they taketh away. Sorry, I had to do that, but okay. So let's dig into some of these local charities. I'd like to share part of this, Bob. I would like to do more if I could. That is, a lot of times I don't know where to give, who to give to. I read some negative things about some charities. I have to be careful there. So some of our guests on previous programs, and certainly hopefully guests on our future programs, we like to come back and say, hey, if you'd like to send $100 to, let's say, a previous guest, Guiding Light Orphans in Avon. GLOW is an African orphanage, and Jolly Lux in Avon, the head of GLOW, has done a wonderful job with this orphanage and things in Africa. And if you go into a website or you do some research, and I'd recommend any charity, get into their website, which I didn't want to talk about hacking and security problems now, but shams and just terrible things that people take advantage. I want to do more. I have good intent to give money, and then I get these crazy scams that are out there. That so do your research. Get into the website. Do things direct. Don't listen to some of these phone calls that everybody gets. We're in the time right now where we talk about the Manchester Road Race, or we talk about some of these fundraising races that are out there. We talk about giving around the holiday, Thanksgiving holiday. And the title of our program today is Giving Tuesday. And nonprofits have gathered momentum on this. I think it's maybe 3 or 4 years old, of giving on Tuesday and bringing the subject more with a public media impact and saying, give to your favorite charity. Well, Giving Tuesday, like Black Friday or Cyber Monday or whatever, okay, it resonates with a lot of people, but the important thing is kind of an attempt to raise the awareness of the importance of giving. And my comment is, we need to have Giving Tuesdays every day of the year. But that's another. Manchester Road Race. Manchester Road Race has been around, 82, 85 years. And the road race entrance, they had like 15,000 here 2 or 3 years ago of runners, and you get your bib number and so on, and you pay a small entry fee. The Manchester Road Race has given to local charities, I think 18 runs in mine, in addition to muscular dystrophy and some other local charities. But they have raised and given tens of thousands of dollars every year to charities. So our hats off to the continued success of the Manchester Road Race. I might add that this year, I did not go. I've only missed 3 road races as a spectator. Let me clear that first, not as a runner. But as a spectator, I think I've only missed 3 road races in the last 18 or 19 years. I did miss this last one last week. Terribly, terribly, terribly cold. And I got chicken. So there you are, but I'll make the next one next year regardless. Another local, we had a guest, I'm guessing, I forget how long ago it was, but Jack Bannon and the Turkey Trot. I think Jack Bannon's Turkey Trot first started 25, 26 years ago. And Jack passed a while back, and the Jack Bannon Turkey Trot has continued. Food bank, and I think a year or so ago, 15,000 turkeys given to the community and the food bank and so on. We had a slight drop last year of almost 500 birds, and I'm waiting for this year's results. But it's always interesting that something as good as that is, and when Jack started, it was for the local community, 2 or 3 towns here in the valley. but now it is expanded. The food bank in Bloomfield and in other towns. I'm not sure of how many towns it serves, but if you, and it's not just going and buying a turkey at Fitzgerald's or Stop and Shop or something like that and giving the turkey. It is, they will accept a check that you write out to Bannon or the food bank to support that effort. A lot of charities start off with well-intended founders. A lot of them financially cannot make it. You have volunteer time, but you have the necessity of raising money. About 2 years ago, we had two young ladies, and they were kicking off a program modeled off of Sarah Leather's sister in Sonoma, California, I believe it is, and they kicked off a similar program here called Healing Meals. I would encourage everyone to go into their website and see the good that Healing Meals is doing in the community. And when I say community, expanding greatly. 24,000 meals since that TV program kicked off 2 years ago. 24,000. And they're looking at having 15,000 meals this year, and it's growing. The mission is incredibly good for the community. It involves teenagers, which is another plum in the go. The icing on the cake of it is you've got local volunteers, plus you're teaching, if you will, teenagers of how to do good, from cooking the meals to delivering the meals to families that are in need and on their target list. But I'd encourage you to look at Healing Meals. Here, I mentioned this, the 14% increase last quarter, mainly from large gifts, 2.6% increase, but it's up quite a bit. Small gifts are down a little bit, as I mentioned. Here's a foundation, and I wasn't familiar with this until I had a meeting at the Connecticut Planned Giving Group down in Ashlar Village. The Stephen Siller Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Now, Stephen Siller was a respondent, a firefighter, I believe, on 9/11 that perished in that tragedy. And there's a foundation in his name and his honor. And the gifting from the foundation, they have a project of $60 million for what they're referring to as new homes for wounded warriors, people wounded in some of our conflicts, quadriplegic, paraplegic, amputees. It's a well-deserving organization, but they have what they refer to as new homes for these people that served us well, and tragically, like I say, were injured. But these new homes are technologically fitted, from audio to security to intercoms to exit egress in and out of the house and so on. But $60 million for upwards of 200 of these homes. And I thought, now here's an organization like Healing Meals that has the mission, and they've grown over the last few years to being they are able to have these 200 homes, $60 million effort. This last piece, the donors, that top 50 that I mentioned, giving over $1 million each. And what catches my eye in that situation is who these people are giving money to. And it's across the board. But education is always there, and it kind of blows my mind when we look at Harvard, for example. They just finished a 5-year drive that netted $9.7 million. You have the University of Michigan, similar deal, their campaign drive netting $5 billion. Did I say 9.7 billion for Harvard? I don't want to forget that B word, billion. And Harvard, $5 billion net. Now, education, if you got me started, or if you want to tune into another program called College Cost Challenges, we have this incredible amount of money coming into these universities and increasing their endowment, but we have this ever increasing cost of education, and people out here that incur, right now we're at $1.5 trillion of student loan debt. So as we're gifting, I wonder if we stop, I hope this isn't repeated, but if we stop giving to universities that have billions and billions and billions of dollars in their endowments, to send a message to these same universities that we've got to do something more about controlling the cost of education for younger families and how they prepare for that. So Giving Tuesday, every day should be Giving Tuesday, and you can be a philanthropist by volunteering. You can be a philanthropist by knowing how to do what you have the capacity to do. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't recently, to review your wills, your legal docs, if you have older wills, and it's amazing to me, and it shouldn't be amazed at this state of mind, but we have people that say, Bob, we need to look at and review and our wills. What's the age of your will? Well, George died in 1987, and we did wills before George died in 84, but I need to look and review at my will. Now, I'm concerned about durable power of attorney and health proxies and agents and so on as much as I am about this other, but from a philanthropic side, it'd be wonderful to look at the charitable bequests that you have in your will and say, do I have the capacity to increase that, not jeopardize my family legacy and so on. I do have the capacity in that respect. So thanks again for tuning in. Look for us the next time on the Philanthropic Planner, and make out a check to Simsbury Community TV. I didn't want to forget that. See you later.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.